Let's see if we can blow a boot off. All right, what the heck is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today is like a huge epic deal for the Powerstroke. This is probably one of the top things that I'm most excited about on doing to the truck. I mean, like obviously minus doing like 1,000 horsepower build. So what we're doing today, you already know by the title, we are doing full intercooler piping for the truck. Now this is a long awaited thing that I've been really excited to do. So I went ahead and already tore some stuff off the truck. It is pretty, it's pretty self-explanatory, honestly. So this is your factory like intake manifold apparatus thing. So this is the black thing that sits up on top of the motor, like so. This is where the EGR mixes with the charged air, and then it goes into the engine with those two horns there. This is the inlet to the turbo. So you can see that this is absolute crud. And that's only a few thousand miles stock. That's how much bad stuff is in there. Like it'll come off thick. Crankcase vent goes in here. So not only you're throwing EGR stuff in, you're throwing oil soaked air into the engine through this port. And this is where your cold side pipe comes in. So this here is just a couple bolts to get off. This here is tricky because these bolts actually stay into here, like they're stuck in there. So getting it out is tricky because the bolts fall down into the bolt holes and then you can't remove it. So we have a full open engine bay right now, so you can see the turbo real good. And that is the factory VGT built by Dan down at SPE. So you have your intake ports back there on each side of the turbo. That's where the intake horn goes. And I also pulled the hot side pipe. So hot side pipes out, cold side pipes out, and then these two monstrosities are out. I honestly didn't feel like I needed to do like a tutorial on this. It's just take all the bolts out, lift it off. The hardest part probably is getting to these back bolts here because it's back like behind the turbo. So here's what we're working with. Right now we have a truck show coming up and I didn't have time to work with Dan to get these powder coated. So we're gonna run them raw for like a couple days. So this is the intake manifold and this sits back here like so. And then this is the cold side pipe. This will go down to the intercooler and then hook to the top of the intake manifold. And then the hot side pipe will be the same because that is the SPE upgraded hot side pipe. That goes right to the turbo, over to the intercooler. Once you get these trucks stripped down, honestly, they're fairly simple. They look intense when you first pop the hood, but you know, once you get the big stuff off, especially like the stock intake manifold piece, that big ugly thing, once you get that off, you'll be like, oh, this isn't too bad. And there's only like 4 bolts that hold that together. All right, guys, so with this one here, since it's like a temporary deal, I am retaining my factory gasket O-ring things out of the factory one. So I just took a little pick, pulled those out, and placed them into the new SPE intake manifold part. So now it's just as simple as putting it right on to those 2 ports on each side of the turbo and then bolting it down with the supplied hardware. Watch this. And there you go. Super easy. So now this is what it's going to look like for right now, raw, till we get it powder coated. But now I'm just going to keep on going with the turbo inlet pipe and then the hot side pipe. But what's really cool about the SPE kit is that they have a killer option to retain whatever intake you bought. So say you bought a like an S&B or maybe even like an SPE intake or whatever, and you just spent $350 on that sucker. And then you're like, oh man, I want to get a piping kit. Well, old man Dan figured out to make this piece here. Now this is a roto molded piece, so this is like just like your S&B, super sturdy, heavy duty. Now this is the piece that takes the place of this contraption here. Full factory mounting location, as in it hooks up to the turbo as factory, and it hooks up to where your S&B intake normally hooks to this. It'll hook to that factory position, which is super cool. So for me, running the S&B, we opted to run this for right now. I do want to build a metal intake piece though. So now this will go down to the turbo like that, and it'll sit up here, factory location, and then the S&B will remain in its position, hooking right to that for a seamless look. So that's how the setup's gonna be for right now, and I'm pretty excited to check this out. All right, guys, so after getting the top intake manifold plenum thing on, I was test fitting up the cold side, and there's a little plastic tab right here on the shroud fin that holds like some of the crossover lines, and it hits the cold side pipe just a little bit. So I tried actually snipping it with some like snips to try to just cut like the corner of it off, but it was still hitting pretty good. So I just decided to get the little cutoff grinder and just buzz the thing off. So we should have full clearance now. All right, so here is the aftermath of cutting that piece off. It actually looks pretty good. You can't really tell that there was ever anything there. So this sat just like this. You can tell where I clipped the end off. It actually came up to about here. And I snipped that off with some snips, and it was still hitting the pipe whenever I would put it in for mock-up. So we just buzzed it off and cleaned it up, and it looks good. You can't really even tell that it was there. I shaved this fin down too, and then shaved this one down just a little bit, just for, you know, added clearance. All right, so here's where we are. The intake plenum is up, installed on the top, and I just installed the hot side pipe, which is a very simple install. That is just 4 T-bolt clamps, and then you have your silicone hose adapters. And then I did just put on the SPE midsection pipe, which is a very, very cool option. I haven't seen one of these ever in the industry. So it connects to the face of the turbo down in the bottom down there with that adapter piece, 2 hose clamps, and then you get this center section here, and it connects up here in the factory position to your intake using the existing rubber hose adapter that would normally connect to your top piece right here. Now guys, there will be options to do like the whole metal intake pipe if you want a metal piece coming from filter to turbo. I was talking with Dan, there is probably going to be something like that in the future coming. This is just one of the options that you can go with if you want to retain your intake, which is a very cool option. So there you go, here's where we are. I did get the bottom hose onto the intercooler on the bottom. Now that's a snug fit down there because that has to be tight because all of the charged air goes in through the hot side pipe, goes through the intercooler, gets cooled down, and comes out of the bottom, which is then the cold side pipe, and that comes up and goes into the intake plenum manifold thing up here. I don't even know the technical term of this thing, so I'm just gonna go with intake plenum thing. Intake manifold, intake horn, whatever you guys want to call it, I'm fine with that. I won't hold it to you. All right, guys, and when I'm dealing with these boots here, this rubber is like crazy sticky. It's like super tight. It has to be. You don't want a boot blown off. So what I do is I just get a cap, and I put a little soap in the cap, a little water and soap. So just some soapy water. It just helps them slide on like way easier than trying to use these without any of that. And it'll dry out, and you won't have any worries about blowing a boot off because you got like grease or WD-40 or something in there. So that stuff's no. Soap and water, it'll dry out. Look at that, see how easy that went on? Real dream. The lineup on this is absolutely killer. And this is a prototype. This isn't even the main kit that you guys will be getting. Perfect. You know what I did? I always do this, and I'm sure you guys too. I forgot to put a clamp on. All right, guys, we are fully tight on all of the boots and clamps. Now, this is an unbiased review. Honestly, I'm gonna keep this quick and short. That is the best looking intake plenum that is on the market. There's a ton of those kind of now in the market, in the industry, and the SPE one is by far, unbiasedly, the best looking intake plenum manifold thing in the deal, and that is raw. This is all unpowder coated. So this is a prototype kit. There's a few things that I want to add in. Now the map sensor, which normally goes on top of your old intake plenum, which sits directly on the top, bolts into the side of the SPE one right there. And then also the CAC temp sensor, which normally goes on your cold side pipe. It's like charged air cooler temp sensor is like the technical term for it. That goes on your cold side pipe somewhere. This doesn't have it yet because this is a prototype. Dan just made this cold side pipe up for me so I could get this intercooler piping kit on because I am super impatient and it absolutely looks amazing and I'm pumped. But anyways, the production kits will obviously have the CAC temp sensor bung hidden in the back so you can't see it. That'll be on there. So right now, this is the first look at the kind of like prototype kit that's going to be available to you guys. I am super pumped. This is obviously stainless. You can tell by the weld. That's going to be aluminum. This is aluminum, and then the intake plenum is also aluminum. So there you go. You can see fitment. You can see clearance. So you see full clearance there. You can see the plastic intake adapter piece that goes to the turbo. The fitment is all very, very nice. Bottom boot on the intercooler, I'm going to adjust that one down there a little bit just because I don't like how low I have the clamp. I'm probably just going to move the clamp up and get a more of a seal, but there's plenty of boot up on the pipe past the bead rolled edge. So there's plenty of sealant there. That clamp is tight. It just kind of bowed out the boot. So I'm going to adjust that. Full clearance on the power steering pump reservoir. A lot of guys are concerned with the cold side pipe hitting the bottom of the bottle. We are still in the factory slide location there, and the factory mount bolt is in. Zero issues with that. The bottom hose is close, but there is still clearance. And we're changing this hose. This hose here is getting changed. I don't like that. I could have definitely ran it under the intake, you know, along the bottom there, but it was a little tight because I have a dual alternator set up on this truck, and the second alternator is under there, so it would have like completely smashed that hose. So I kind of just have it sitting like that for now, but we're gonna change that. I know there's a kit on the market right now that does that, but we're trying to come up with kind of like a better system to that, so stay tuned on that. We'll get to that. All right, guys, there you go. There is the intercooler piping on the 6.7 Powerstroke. I am overly pumped about this whole entire kit. I don't know when they're gonna be available, so bear with me. I'm sure like the second they're getting close to actually having a time frame on when they're gonna be available, I'll post a video and an upload on Instagram. So follow me on Instagram to stay up to date with that whole process, because these are definitely the sickest, best performing, and best looking intercooler piping kits for the 6.7 Powerstroke. Yeah, the actual OD of that cold side pipe is 3.5 inches, which is monsters. So there's a lot more action going on there than just a good looking piping kit. Test drive, immediately within the first couple seconds you can tell that there is a deeper engine rumble sound, which is sick. I really like it. Listen. Turbo whistle is absolutely insane, and then you have a nice deep, you don't really hear it on the high end, you hear it on the low end, like right there in the downshift. I'm talking over it, I know. Yeah, so it's definitely on the low end side of things. You can hear it. Don't really hear any difference on the top end. But on the low end, 100%. Man, am I pumped. I'm super pumped.